My agenda today is kind of spend a little time talking about the bio, which you'll see part of it right here. You get an update on who we are as the NC State and the College of Natural Resources. Give you a little history of my background, sort of how I got started in this world, in this space, and then we'll talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in most that's happening here at NC State, especially in our college, and do a little bit of conversation on our workforce in the Jedi world as it relates to justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. I'll start by telling you that I am the Executive Director of Forest Assets here at NC State, which means I manage over 100,000 acres of land with about 3 other team members. We represent close to $5 million of income a year that goes toward our college, makes the dean a little happy and some of the students and faculty and staff. I also serve as a Vice President of the Natural Resources Foundation, which means my tagline for who I am, I spend time telling people that I make money for the college and I tend to ask people for money, and I don't have a problem asking. I also serve as the Society of American Foresters President. I'm President for the World Forestry Center. I'm a board member of the Forest History Society and a member of the Sustainable Forest Initiative Resource Committee, representing the Black Family Land Trust. I heard some of you speak about your landowner engagement. A lot of my work outside of NC State, since I'm not an extension person, focuses on landowner outreach, especially in minority communities. But I tend to tell people it's not just minorities, it's basically any landowner who has no knowledge of what we do in forestry and conservation. So I try to bring all landowners along so we can engage more communities in the world that we operate in. I serve as a former board member for the Triangle Land Conservancy and the North Carolina Coastal Land Trust right here in Raleigh. Both are, one is in Durham, the other is in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I've been an avid conservationist my entire career. A little bit about, I back up. My career started at Tuskegee and I finished there in 1982. Came to NC State and got a forestry degree. And when I left NC State and along the way, I was working for the Forest Service with the Intermountain Forest Range Experimental Station out in Boise, Idaho, which is my first entry point into forestry. Spent a lot of time traveling between Arizona into Anchorage, Alaska, taking research flights. My claim to fame is when Mount St. Helena erupted, I was there for the research flights, data collection afterwards, and such a catastrophe. Most importantly, I spent 9 years with Duke Power, which I became was focused on their conservation in the forestry space, but dealing with the power line business. I spent 17 years with International Paper Company from what we call at that time a dirt forester. I also managed land along the way. I ran a sawmill for 3 years, and I was the regional manager on both ends of the sawmill business, working on behalf of the supply chain business for pulp mills, and on the latter end, I did it for the sawmills. So my last job with them was responsible for 5.5 million tons of wood a year, with about 60 employees, maintaining 9 sawmills along the East Coast from Franklin, Virginia to Jacksonville, Florida. So we look at the presentation for you today is called Addressing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Forest Industry. I thought I would share this with you because this will show you how we do it here at NC State, but it also mirrors a lot of the other institutions that we partner with or other institutions that have embraced this space. We feel that it's important for us to deliver around what we mean to diversify our sector. And so with this presentation, you'll see some things that we have done to increase diversity, but we'll also share some things that, we need to do better in. We are the 6th in the nation ranked by USA Today here at NC State in our college. We have an outstanding faculty group. We're very close to the community. Our motto is think and do. We have a practical education that combines theory and classroom instructions with also hands-on field work and real-world research. Strong extension side on all of our departments, but a focus on in the communities to help people understand how important what we do as a college. In our college, we have 3 departments, one being Forestry and Environmental Resources, which is the side of business I came from. The other is the Parks, Recreation Management and Tourism. And then we have a sustainable materials, also called biomaterials. If those of you back in the day remember what we used to call pulp and paper or wood products, that would be the Sustainable and Biomaterials Department. We did not have a Parks, Recreation Management and Tourism side, but since we added a golf course and spent time recruiting a lot of students into this particular field for the Park Service and other educational opportunities, we brought that into our college right about 8 or 9 years ago. And the Forest Environmental Resource side has always been a forestry and wildlife school here at the college, which is what I went through in 1982 to 85. As I stated, we're number 6 by the USA Today. We're number 10 out of 270 natural resource conservation colleges. Number 5 out of the 93 schools for overall quality in North Carolina, and 72 out of the 443 national universities. We have an outstanding group here. We're committed to excellence. As I stated earlier, have an outstanding faculty group, have a close knit to our college community, but we have combined theory and classroom instruction with hands-on field work, research. Our students enter our college with a passion. I spend a lot of time with our students along my career and even while I'm here at NC State. Most people always say, am I a faculty? I'm not a faculty. I teach one class every fall, and it's centered around careers in forestry. We've been fortunate to have Katie come in and speak to the group for the past 3 or 4 years, because when COVID hit, we were able to expand our reach to get more people that did not have to participate by coming into class. These are guest lecturers that show up on Zoom, or we have some classroom settings as well to talk about how they got started, what they do today, and what are some opportunities for our students in the future. The students range from, I have sometimes freshmen that are auditing the class because they're unsure, but most of our students are juniors and seniors or graduate level. And all of our students, I must say, we have a very successful track rate from employment. Most of our students, especially in the forestry arena, we're 100% placement as long as they want a job. Our wildlife students are still strong in the industry, but we tend to put more emphasis on them spending time beyond just wildlife, helping them focus on other degrees. Some of the careers are forest managers, fisheries, and wildlife professionals, hydrologists, air or water, even carbon and environmental compliance, and urban foresters is also beginning to be a reach for us as well. We do not have that as a curriculum, but we do plan to add it to our curriculum. So think about, this was me, started in my early years with my family, young kid in the top left-hand corner, all the way over to me and my sister on the right-hand corner. The family is in the center, my mother is on the end. So my story is about what I told you earlier. I came from a town called Linden, Alabama, where we had nothing to do with forestry. Not only did I not know, but my dad, my brother, both worked in the forestry sector, but no one ever came home and talked about it. I had an extensive career in elementary all the way through high school. I was in FFA. My first trip away from home was Kansas City, Missouri, where we judged cattle. Won a cattle judging contest years ago, back in the day, that allowed us 4 little kids coming from a small town to sit down around a restaurant table and order a 32-ounce steak apiece. And they said, if you eat it all, get another one for free. We said that 32-ounce steak would have to be shared with every family member in the house. So it was 7 of us in my family. As you can see, 6 here. One sister was not part of the family because my dad had her on the West Coast, but we still worked with her as a whole. The little young kid over here to the right, my daughter and my wife, we got married here in '82 and did it in Raleigh and spent time over the last, what we still our 40th anniversary. Here is the 4 kids that I met when I came to NC State for our forestry summer camp, which is required for all forestry students and not required for wildlife students, but they're allowed to attend for wildlife. If not, they must take 2 internships. So we had a good group of students, but I must say, look at this black kid, Mexican kid, white kid, and another black kid. We all met for the first time at summer camp. We're still friends today. Our first trip away was to the kid here. Went to Cincinnati in a Volkswagen Beetle to visit with his family for Thanksgiving. Made my mother mad. First article written, my sister had it added to our little small newspaper in town. Seemed to be very proud of her brother, but it told the story of how I got started coming from a small town and making a career in this world of forestry. So we are, as a college, very committed to diversity, equity, inclusion. Didn't put the word justice, but it's very important that we add that word, because we should all think about ways that we can bring justice into the DEI space. We are very committed on creating an environment for DEI, and we want to celebrate the value. We take diversity for innovation for people with all backgrounds. We want to work together to help solve complex problems. What we haven't realized, and I think this is across our entire sector, our world is changing. It's getting to be more diverse with more types of people, more different people, and they are living in the spaces that own land, that want to do some around management of their land. And it's critical that we include them in the information that we are sharing with all people to empower them as community members to reach their highest potential. One of my projects that I did back in 2012, 2013 was funded by the U.S. Endowment for Foresters and Communities. We created something called the Sustainable Forestry African American Land Retention Program. That program allowed us to do a pilot study in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Alabama. What it provided for us is the opportunity to recruit landowners into the forestry space to focus on land retention, land ownership, and how do you make income off your land. It was tied to forestry, but one thing we changed along the way as we started the pilot, took the whole land utilization approach, which says landowners have land, they may have ag, they may have trees, and they may have both. When I think about the minority landowners that I dealt with throughout my career, all landowners sat there with land that had sometimes ag land that was undeveloped or unmanaged. So part of our process was helping those landowners reach their goals and objectives by ensuring that we help them understand with owning land and retaining land, but most importantly, generate income. So think about minorities in this field and why they are not. If you look at these 6 different buckets, forestry was typically held by the traditional white male, and now it's still an older white male community. The racial and ethnic diversity of communities varies greatly across our country. Forest industry, it continues to struggle with workforce diversity. We are working on this project along with Katie, this inclusion council we created with the U.S. Endowment and other industry partners across our space. How do we create a program or create a team of people that we wake up every day thinking about how do we diversify our population of people in our industry? Underrepresented groups, especially in inner city students, they often have limited access to green space. I was not so sure about this until one time I was in the low country of South Carolina, specifically Johns Island, working with a conservation group called the Low Country Land Trust. We invited the land trusts in from Tennessee. They brought about 12 minority students to the table where they started a project with them, helping them to get out on the land. Kids got up and talked about they live directly across from the Forest Service land. They had never been on that land until someone came over and created this program and invited them into the space. We feel like most people don't understand what green space has to offer, so we have to create that space and invite people in there. I'll also allow them to feel comfortable and included. And like myself growing up, I had a backyard, I had woods around me. I love to hunt, I love to fish, but there's no one taking me out in the woods. I just chose to do that because we learned to grow up in that space. But there are a lot of kids that don't have the opportunity to do that. One of our weaknesses, especially in today's climate, and this happened years ago when kids were told to go north to get away to be safe, families told their children to leave the farm. But most importantly, they focus on careers in engineering, the medical or legal fields. They were told you should not do anything as relates to the outside. You don't need to be a farmer. Don't work in the natural resource space. It does not pay. One of our processes is that's what we go out and educate families on with the children to help them see that there is an opportunity. 3% of the foresters and conservationists in the United States are African Americans. That's a very low number. And if we add all minorities, it's probably in that same level. So we need to do a better job of educating our people along the way about what are these careers, and we got to do it early. We cannot wait till they're in 11th grade and say, oh, you should think about this field. And finding with the work that I do at a high school here as a pilot study, helping those students see that forestry is a career path. Natural resources is a career path. Conservation is a career path. But what they lose is the ability of having families there to support it. So part of our project here at Nightdale is engaging families, the faculty of the student, of the teachers, and the career coaches. So all parties are being taught and trained and educated on the same outcome to know that we're doing this strictly for the students. So here's just an example of some of our students that came through the program. This is one of our most, I call it my talented individual, Mr. Kenneth Dunn. Started in environmental science, lived in Durham, North Carolina, grew up in the inner city, had no knowledge that forestry was a career path. He only went to school to get an environmental science degree. I met him in his junior year, and I said, what kind of job will you get? He took a look at me and he says, I have no idea. So I said, let's talk about forestry. And what if I can get you in school, get a master's in forestry, and show you that there's a career path for you? He brought me to his house, introduced me to his mother. His mother and father says he must graduate. He's our first kid out of school. I said, no one's telling you he will not graduate. We're only asking you to allow him to come back to school. Full ride scholarship, job opportunities, internships, and everything. How can you say no? They said it's impossible. So we did. Now Kenneth is a successful forester working in Charleston, South Carolina, and probably the most sought after individual now in the industry to come work for them as a whole. Just some of our students on the work crew, students as a whole, attended summer camp on the coast. One of our prior department heads, Dr. Tom Gower, said, the world is rapidly changing and diverse perspectives formed from diverse experiences are instrumental to developing sustainable solutions to global challenges of any organization, whether it's a family-run company or a Fortune 500 company. He is an ecologist, and the more diverse the species composition of an ecosystem is, the more resilient and productive ecosystem is to participate, such as climate change. I believe the same is true for our society, and I still believe it's true today. Other students coming from other universities, you'll see later some of these students' names, and also how they came from other HBCUs, which are the historically Black universities, to our school to finish up in the master's program or out working in the field. Here's some ways that we are trying to create more diverse workforce in forestry. We spend a lot of time with historically Black universities and also in rural community schools, recruiting students of color. But most importantly, as I stated earlier, we have to spend time educating the family, recruiting the families, and selling them on the opportunity as well. We don't just talk about come to school, get a degree. We talk about here are the jobs in that field. Here are the opportunities. Here are the places. Here's what funding you will get as income. Giving the kids an opportunity to see that they can do things and compare they probably were told to go through, that there's an opportunity for you. We talked about the caregivers. We also spent a lot of time over the past, I could say, since I came here in 2016, on involving other industry partners and supporting this work. We need finance, we need resources, we need internships, we need co-ops. We need them to embrace it the same way that we're bringing students to the table. Since the government agencies and donors to support grants, support scholarships, do a lot of work through USDA with the National Needs Fellowship Program. We spend time in the Doris Duke Scholars Program. I've worked with some industry partners to set up scholarships and Foresters of the Future funds, which allows us to invest in students when they show up, We invest in them before they get here, right out of high school, to show them that here's what we do in our career and how we operate as a whole. So successful diversity programs spend years building the trust of the leaders in underserved communities. And once the trust once the trust pipeline is established, which is what we did with the Sustainable Forestry Program, it allowed us to embrace not only the adults, but we brought youth along at the same time. The program became a success story for the U.S. endowment by allowing them to say we can invest in about 5 other sites. Those 5 other sites include Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, and Virginia. We brought the initial one on last, which is in Texas. Now, all 8 sites are operational and running, and they spent some time in the past 3 years working under the American Forestry Foundation. So as recent as this year, they're going to launch out and to build their own network, which will be the first Black-led organization working in the space of forestry and conservation and in landowner outreach. This is something I mentioned earlier. We have a MOU with Tuskegee, which is a memorandum of understanding, where we have an accelerated graduate program. Some of the students you see in the last couple of pictures were part of that. It's 3 years at Tuskegee, 2 years here at NC State. Those students come in their 3rd year. They attend summer camp that 3rd year. They then come back into our college, spend the last 2 years to have a 4th year in an accelerated master's program, which means they'll finish their senior year with a Tuskegee degree, but they fully transfer into us on that 5th year to ensure that they're in our master's program with about 20 plus credits of hours already tied to the undergrad accelerated graduate degree. In 2017, we joined forces with the TMO, which is Resource Management Services, which was one of our first creation of what we call the Forests of the Future. They helped establish that to help us with unrestricted funds to help students like what we brought in from Tuskegee and other HBCUs. But they also set up a $10,000 scholarship for rising juniors. They must attend summer camp to be able to be awarded that scholarship. And those individuals get awarded to be able to get the opportunity to come back and interview for a job or interview as an intern. And most of them have accepted or either worked for them going forward. We're trying to bring others into this movement. So students who earn forestry, wildlife, and fishery degrees typically enjoy a variety of careers in the public and private sector. My latest project is with the Department of Interior, where I spend time with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, specifically the Southeast, helping them to embrace the Sustainable Forestry Land Retention Program, also in educating their leaders in the field and their top leadership around what it means to work with diverse populations, but ensuring that we set up a recruitment program for them to recruit more students of color. We spent since 2019 working on that project, and as recent as last year and this year, we almost have 3 MOUs in place, one with Alcorn State already signed, finishing up one with Tuskegee, and finalized the review process with Alabama A&M in Huntsville as recent as yesterday. This is Alabama A&M's. They're called the Fire Dogs, probably the first African-American HBCU, land grant university, that's created a program that gets more minorities in the fire. Very successful program. They work on community landscapes and other lands across the state of Alabama. They also have a partnership with Tuskegee and Southern universities. And we are working with another partnership on a workforce development grant that brings all 4 of the schools together to ensure that we continue to focus on diversity as it relates to create more jobs and opportunities for the minority students. Here's what I talked about, the forces of the future. So as you can tell, we include females, we include males, and myself, who's been engaged with this since I showed up back here in 2016, but it was a near and dear to my heart when I started back in 20. Because along my career, I can only see people that look like me. So I made a point in my career to say that I want to spend some time finding ways to engage more students of color into this field and helping to get them there. And part of the reason I wanted to do this by asking others, I invested in 2 funds here at NC State to help do the same thing that the Forests of the Future Fund does. Here's one of our future leaders. He's working at Rayonier. He came through from Tuskegee. finished his master's degree here. He was also awarded the National Needs Fellows, which is a full ride master student fellowship program. And now he was offered a position at Rayonier. He did an internship with RMS previous. Marley Smith, recipient of the Foresters of the Future Fund, came from Tuskegee as well. Also was part of the National Needs Program. Asia Rice, she's a graduate in the vocation area. Her interest has always been urban forestry. She spent some time with us from Southern University and came to us a few years back, graduated last year now, and she was also a successful candidate of the National Needs Program and working now for the Center for Areas Property Preservation as a forester and part of the Sustainable Forestry African Land Retention Program sites. So here's a list of some of the students that some you've seen in a picture, others we have not talked about. But if you take a brief look at, you can see some of the successes. If you don't see a career by an individual's name, it means they're still looking for other ways to diversify themselves in the career path. Marley is back at Tuskegee. If you see where Sumilata, she's also wrapping up a PhD and working between us and North Carolina A&T. Now, Sam does not do all this work alone and not in a vacuum. In order for us to be very successful, one of the things that was created back in 2017 prior to COVID is working with these, not just these individuals, but these departments, like the student engagement and recruitment, or assistant dean for college and advancement. That's where we try to help us raise the money. I focus from the forest asset side, but I also focus on the recruitment side by helping others get into other spaces that they typically don't have an opportunity to get into, primarily the industry space. Have a lot of professors, former professors, extension groups. We have our first interim associate dean for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and he's also a professor of geospatial engineering. We have other professors such as Dr. Nichols, Dr. Jennifer Richmond Bryant, Angela Allen, who came over in our environmental technology side of the business. Louis Rivers, which was an adjunct professor, but he also was here with us as recent up until 2019. He took a job with the Environmental Protection Agency, but he has an opportunity to show up back up here any time. In this new administration, he did. So over to your right, you'll see some of the people we've been working with, who we're talking about, the schools that we have from academic partners, the ministry partners that we've also embraced and been helping us along the way. No matter whether it's dollars, resource, scholarships, internships, they all have played a part in it. And if you look at the organizational partners, these are individuals that have helped us continue to move and place kids to help them get out into the workforce. We talked a little bit about the Doris Duke Scholars. Dr. Leggett, she leads that up. She spends a lot of time since 2016 advising and mentoring about 40 students. Here are some of the results of her work and some of the projects, but each student gets a $5,000 summer stipend. And this has been one of our, I call it our primo success stories, because these students get to show up somewhat in their sophomore, junior, and senior year. Some have no knowledge of what they want to do. We embrace them, engage them, send them off to conferences, have them speaking at those conferences, meeting new people. But by the time they finish up, they know what career path they want to take. The majority of these students go back and either take their master's or get a master's or a PhD. Just a map showing you some of the things we just embraced and talked about from the universities, places we operate in, and where we get around to recruit and help and work partnerships with other students to be part of the space. Some partners as a whole, not all inclusive. I'm sure we missed a few. But the slide presentation, some parts are still not updated to where we are today. Like I wanted to share with you who we are as a university, but most important, who we are as a college, but deep down to who we are as individuals, helping these students see what there are many other opportunities besides just, I want to go to school and not knowing what the outcome will be when they get out. And so we only focus on getting students in and out, whether they take a job with us, go to school somewhere else and get a degree, our goal is to increase the population of kids out into this career path of conservation and natural resources.